Welcome to Unboxing, Play and Profit for the Gaming Curious. I'm Lane Nooney.
And I'm Joost van Dreunen.
And we're here digging deep on why games matter in today's economy. On the docket today, Friday, August 15th, we break down more earnings from EA, Take-Two, and Krafton and what they tell us about the state of the industry. Then we've got updates on our hottest summer topics. Valve and Itch are still playing chicken with payment processors, and Epic is getting wins against Apple and Google down under in Australia. Plus, who was throwing those dildos at the WNBA games last week? Stick around to find out. All that and more with your two very modest co-hosts. But first, we've got some catching up to do. What? I didn't dance.
The zeal on this intro.
Don't you want to know who was throwing those dildos?
The zeal is just in the red. Fantastic.
How are you? Still upstate, I see.
Yep. I'm not coming down the mountain ever again. I love the city, but I love the not city also very much.
You stayed up there for too long.
Yeah, no, I gotta go. I say this, but I gotta go. I gotta go home. I need sushi. I need people.
Did the big red truck ever get fixed?
No, it's above my pay grade. My main card doesn't allow for it. I had to find a real adult to get informed. I've been, having the best time driving around. I had a meeting the other day in Ghent, so I've just been cruising.
That's
both sides of the river.
In The Witcher, right?
Ghent.
Yeah.
I know this. Like, I have family close to Ghent in Belgium.
It's the name.
Belgium.
Ghent is the name of the card game in The Witcher, right? But isn't it also?
Well,
like
that's with an A. That's right.
Oh.
But
anyway.
Whatever. But there's also so you have all these upstate towns that have Dutch names, and like these stupid street names. There's one nearby called Schoenmaker, which is Schoonmaker, which is cleaner road. You're like, okay, who came up with this? But it's probably some surname or whatever. So I've been enjoying that. I've been
some of your ancestors who came
finding my roots in the countryside.
Early.
Yeah. How are the gains? How are the macros?
I'm being so obsessed with my weightlifting routine.
Okay. Well, outside the podcast and weightlifting, do you do anything?
Do I do anything? I mean, I go to a lot of basketball games. I went to the Statue of Liberty on Friday.
No way. How's she doing?
She's doing all right. I set it as a personal enrichment goal. So after that big trip I took in the spring,
mm-hmm.
I felt, where I was a tourist in all of these great cities of the world. I kind of came back and I was like, what is it like to be a tourist in New York? Because I looked around and I was like, New York, one, is disgusting. And what are I've never done the tourist things in New York City. And I was like, well, I should experience New York that way. So I set myself a goal to see the Statue of Liberty. I did not make it there in time to see Ellis Island, so that needs to be a separate trip. But it's actually a cute little day trip. You get to ride a ferry. I ate a hot dog. I saw the tall lady. The museum is actually quite cute. It's got kind of has interactive exhibits. There's a movie you watch. It's nice. It's pleasant. You get to be outside in some, in the sea.
Waterfront New York is great. Like Governor's Island too. Like you can just take these ferries and you have the best time. I used to live in Staten Island, and so I would take that ferry every day. The water is fantastic. It just chills everything out.
Yeah.
So is it touristy? Like, as a resident, would you recommend everybody now goes and visits this or no?
I think if you haven't been, it's probably one of those things you should go see at some point. I think Ellis Island is the more historically rich site. They recommend a longer period of time there. I think it's like one ticket, but the Statue of Liberty is kind of like the novelty event of the big statue. But Ellis Island, I think, is actually kind of I've heard people have really moving and important experiences there. But yeah, Liberty is a cool idea if this country was at all interested in protecting it.
Oh, no, that's over, Lane. I don't know if you checked. That's done. That's done.
It's like, oh yeah, I can get behind like this value, sure. Like, too bad. Like, it didn't feel like too uber patriotic, and I felt like the crafting of the museum space did a good job trying to like foreground the both kind of iterative project that Liberty is.
Mhm.
It was more nuanced than I anticipated it might be. Yeah, and I think, you can take your kids there and let them run around. So
If that's a suggestion for me to take my kids to any of these places, no thanks.
it's just like, I need no suggestions from you.
No, it's like so we'll move on. But let me just preface by saying this one thing. Like, there's two kinds of parent styles, and one school of thought is let's take my children to brunch on Sunday and go to all these adult situations with like 3-year-olds. And then there's me and my wife, and no thanks. It's just like, don't do that. Why would you? Nobody wants that. So I don't know. Maybe when they're a little older, like
A little
the
older, that's true.
12 and up, maybe 8 and up. But like a 4-year-old, like, are you
Yeah, you're right.
all they can say
There
is
were
cream,
a lot of there were a lot of babies there. There was a baby crying in the movie theater.
No,
There
no
were a lot of
thanks.
children running wild in the gift shop,
Mm-mm.
etc. A baby doesn't need to be at Ellis Island. Like, what are you doing? There's
If
too
you
much
really
going on.
want to have a good time on a rainy day, go to the Museum of Natural History, Upper West Side. Yo, that's like all of New York's children are in this one museum. It's just like
I know
that's the
that
zoo.
place. I used to date the African and Pacific curator at the AMNH.
Oh,
So
that reflection.
I
Okay. You
then
out there.
we broke up and now she works in crypto. I don't know. Like,
Pivoted, hard
I
pivot.
my past contains multitudes. So
Checker past of curators and crypto aficionados. All right,
when are you back?
this weekend,
Oh, okay. So next episode you'll be back in the city. All right.
God willing.
Doesn't feel the same without you.
You know, I miss it too, and you. And Keaton is also not in the city yet, so it's like, it's mostly empty right now. I know it's a large
Nothing's
burden.
going on. Nothing's
City's
going on.
dead. Don't come to New York until we're both back. All right, let's talk about earnings.
All right. Yeah, you've been hungry. You've been a hungry hippo for this.
Well, so let me start here with the opening, which is that it's like a early season is like a group project, right? So everybody's like, here are my grades, here are my work, I did my job, and so they all want to kind of be first, and they want to show up, and they want to do something good. They want to appease investors. So we sort of have a pick of the litter here. I was going to go. I guess you suggested that we do EA, Krafton, and which one? Take Two?
Oh yeah, I thought that's what we had discussed.
Yeah.
If I was wrong, sorry, but that's what's in the recorded docket now.
No, that's totally fine. We're going to do those
All right.
3. And then I was probably going to sprinkle in some Sony and maybe a little Xbox. I just came from an analyst call with Xbox, which is a flex, obviously, but also it's interesting. Like, they had, it's like these
I
companies
dated
all,
an analyst at Xbox.
I used to date an analyst who's now a curator at some museum. The earnings season is always about like setting some narrative, right? So particularly Microsoft had a bunch of layoffs. We talked about those, and so I walked away from this earnings call, from this analyst call just now, sort of feeling like, okay, they're trying to do their thing without really being able to disclose too much. But let me just start by saying I have a prediction that they're going to. I don't know this. They didn't tell me this. I'm not providing any confidential information when I say I predict that they're going to launch new tiers, probably around mobile and advertising in the coming months, if not year. That's my guess. I don't know this
What do you mean
unconfirmed.
tiers?
So right now you just have your Game Pass tier. I wrote a whole piece about this a year ago. It's like, actually, subscription-based models, they benefit from having different tiers, both premium on the high end as well as more accessible ones. This is exactly what Disney has done. This is precisely what Netflix has done. And so Game Pass, in its ravenous appetite towards more users, will probably do the same. They increased the price already a little bit, so you get the sort of day and date releases of the AAA stuff. And I speculated well over a year ago that they would come up with a $30 a month as well as like a $6 or $7 a month for mobile, including some ads. We'll see. Again, like none of this is confidential. I don't actually know this, other than this my prediction, but I'm quite confident that's where it's going to have to go based on
Right.
every other subscription model out there.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Sony added something though in the nature of controlling the narrative, has been doing really interesting things in that they now also have this sit down fireside with their leadership. So you have I forget her name, Lynn, what's her name? She's the CFO, and Herman, who is the head of studios now. And they're sort of doing this, like, I don't know, this sort of kind of weird daytime TV, sit in a chair while they answer these, they're not all softball questions.
Like they're doing this for their investors or
Lin, is it Lin Tao? Very cool.
Lintao?
Okay. So, yes, for their investors. And it's interesting the degree to which they are trying to communicate and control the narrative, like, or the way in which they're trying to do that. Like, it's clear that
What's
they have
the
to prove.
narrative that needs to be controlled?
Well, so like it just on a meta level gives you transparency as opposed to like some deck. And usually what they do with earnings calls, they have some, like, what they call an analyst call, but it's just like a phone bank, and you just sit in, and then like management basically reads off a piece of paper some notes, and then some of the more esteemed analysts, they get a chance to ask a question. So if you're like the research analyst for Bank of America, you get to like throw in a question, and then the operator designates a person, and they answer it, and they go, oh, thank you, and then that's all recorded. But it's not this high def production, right? It's just them on the phone, basically, somewhere in a room. What Sony did is like, hey, let's have a breakout for just the games division, and here they are sitting in a chair in their nice clothes, answering nice questions of some other fourth person who's interviewing them. And you're like, all right, that's interesting. Like, we're doing some kind of quiz. Like, Microsoft did this a year ago where they had some kind of fireside too with Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer. So that seems to be the new thing. They have to sort of show
Yeah,
time
does this express
art.
a kind of new anxiety, that the sense of the need to like refine how this looks, or the kind of presentation model, right?
I think on a meta level, that's exactly what they're doing. They're making themselves more accessible, more personable. Yeah, these people are in a leadership position because they are also able to sway and convince, and they're charismatic. So they're not, that difficult to put in front of a camera and say a couple of like single, sound bites that will go over well. So in that sense, it's sort of like a natural extension. They also know, of course, that they live in a world of video. Like, this kind of stuff travels ostensibly better. It's a little easier to watch, that kind of stuff. So I think that's interesting. They did also very well. So Sony had a lot of like things to cheer about. I'll summarize it for you real quick. But so they've been doing really well in terms of their games division, $30.7 billion in sales for 2024, which is the most profitable console generation in its history,
Oh
generating
wow.
$2.7 billion in operating income. Their monthly active user base is up 14% year over year at 124 million monthly actives. And this is an interesting new metric that they came up with. Life to date spent per PlayStation 5 device was $846.
What is
So
that? So that's the amount a consumer has spent, who has the console has spent over the life of owning it.
correct.
Whoa.
And that is up from 669 for the PS4. So I
Wow.
guess you're starting to get these metrics. There's basically like, okay, so one unit is this many users, is this many dollars over a period of time, and then you can compare it, saying like, when we kick these devices into the universe, how much money comes back to us? And so apparently the number is $846, which is interesting just to say, like, it's, the perspective, the idea, the conceptually behind the metrics, as well as the increase. Naturally, of course, they will only present numbers that make them seem more successful, but they are pretty successful in that regard. The issue now, the challenge in front of them, is, of course, that they are now breaching the end of the life cycle for the PlayStation 5 and headed towards the next version. The Switch 2 is out. People are kind of, so these questions that they come up with are like, oh, aren't you worried? Or should Sony PlayStation be worried about Nintendo's success with the Switch 2 and the younger demographic? How do you stay relevant? And then they say, well, we have Astrobot and we're building that out. So that actually resonates well. So it's sort of this back and forth, like, how do you answer these strategic questions? It's worth a watch in a sense, but they're
Is it
pushing
on
clearly.
is it
It's
on
on.
YouTube?
They keep all this on the Sony investor relations site. So if you just
Okay.
Google company name and then IR, the letters IR, usually you will go directly to the top hit will be the investor relations page, and you can find it there. They make it easy to find. What used to be the case is like 10, 20 years ago, you'd have these SEC filings, like you'd have to weed through like an 8K or 10K or whatever. And it's sort of like a legal document with absolutely the least amount of formatting. So it's just brutal to go through it. Now you just get to watch a little video of Nishino-san and Herman Hulst.
Yeah, all the information they've cherry-picked to share with you because you don't want to read the SEC filing.
No, am I getting wet here? Okay, I'm fine. The next one I want to talk about is Take-Two. That's another big one because people are a little bit worried. Like, okay, so you kicked out GTA 6. What's up for the rest of the year? So they did well. They outperformed consensus. Take-Two came in with 1.5 billion for its Q1 2026 in net revenue. So they
Q1
were
2026?
Yeah, so fiscal years they don't match like human calendars like you and me. So they're currently in their 2026 fiscal year, the first quarter. But
Sure. Okay.
I'm sure
it's
that's
like when we're
someone.
releasing all the cars for next year, this year.
Yeah, it's accounting. They love to make that more complicated. It's August. What are you talking about? It's 2020. Anyway, but so they came up over $100 million, and they had 11% year-over-year growth. So everybody's excited, but everybody's waiting for GTA 6. The big release is basically how they're going to carry the year is Borderlands 4, NBA 2K 2026, and Mafia: The Old Country. Do you play those basketball games?
Okay, so I have one story. I know about them because my students present on them all the time. But I bought last year's NBA 2K because it was supposed to be the first one that would ever let you play, or maybe the second one that would let you play the women. But I bought it for Switch, which just doesn't have the WNBA on it for some reason. So I spent $60 on a game that doesn't have that, for whatever reason, for that specific platform, does not have that content. And I'm still salty about it and will not be purchasing it again. That's my thought. So I'm mad.
Don't you have the internet? Like, why don't you look this up beforehand? Like,
why the fuck would I think that a game advertised to have this content would not have this content on one specific iteration of it? That's absurd.
So this
is like, we only have half the teams on this release. Sorry, you didn't Google that first? Like, fuck you, you know?
My bad. That's a totally reasonable thing to be upset about.
And now, because we live in this trash world of digital purchases, I can't just take it back or even sell it for like partial, recuperation. I know this is not the point, but you activated this core anger in me.
I triggered Lane. All right. So you'll be excited then about the 2026 edition, which is coming out soon, which hopefully will have all of the players and all of the teams, including the women.
I think Angel Reese is on the cover of that one.
Well,
yeah.
So that should lock it down. Can't have that and not have them in there. The main thing that's of interest here to the research analyst is the question around Mafia: The Old Country. Game looks amazing. Trailer looks spectacular. It's it's really well done. I haven't been big on the Mafia franchise, but you can see how they are. When they do Old Country, so there's horses, so they're probably using the Red Dead Redemption engine and like all this stuff. Rockstar has this way of they build like this cool feature to an engine and then they use it in every other game.
Set like in 1990s, 1900s Sicily. Wow. Okay. Wow, this is some real like incel content or something, like this is
incel content. Why?
This is games about men for men. Okay.
I don't know. I haven't played it. The question on the board for a lot of people is like, is it worth the AAA price tag if it's a 13-hour game?
It's only 13 hours.
That's what I'm told. So I haven't played it obviously, but so that's sort of the equation. A reporter reached out the other day and asked that question. Like,
that's crazy.
Is that fair? And what's the?
I mean,
is
I
that
think
going to drive enough?
The answer to that is categorically no. A 13-hour game. That's wild. I mean, I'm all in favor of making games that are smaller, but price accordingly. Like, who's spending $70 for that, you know?
Mhm.
Certainly indies can't get away with that, you know? And they make content that has, you know, like, I certainly spent more than 13 hours playing, you know, Downwell or whatever.
Mhm.
So
Well, not that basketball game that you did not play that 13 hours.
that also worst UX I'd ever experienced. It was just, I was like, who made this? Like, this is I feel trapped inside this game just trying to, like, you know, create a team. I'm out.
She's so angry today. All right, let's do the next one. Let's see. Let's go with EA. Is that, yeah, we covered Take-Two. So Take-Two is doing fine, but everybody's waiting. We've been waiting for years. I can't wait to see what comes there. So EA comes in kind of flat, 3% year over year up with bookings. Total revenue for Q1 2026 was 1.7 billion, 0.7% up year over year. So nothing.
0.7. Oh.
Yeah, I like that. You know, like if that was my salary, that doesn't match inflation, so that's not exciting. You know, what is exciting is that live services is now 72% of its bookings total. Full games are only 27% year over year. Sorry, they were up 27% year over year, particularly with EA Sports and College Football 2026. So in other words, like they've been able to make the transition away from FIFA and hold the line. It hasn't, you know, really, I say, manifested into like a big bump. I'm expecting that to change, but you know, like it's a bit of a slow growth, I guess, for them in the moment. They are, I say, are improving or increasing their R&D spending, and so that's usually a good sign with regards to like building new IP and expanding on existing ones. So EA did well when they first separated from FIFA by improving their engine and a bunch of other sort of in-game mechanics and sort of like the sort of mechanical experience of it. And so that usually comes from R&D. So people are excited about that. You know, that seems to be, you know, both shareholders and consumers seem to be optimistic. They expect to go up, but Battlefield 6 is a bit of a, you know, a big maybe for some people. Is that game going to hold its own? You know, are they there with this? Have you played Battlefield 6?
No,
Not for you?
not for not. That's, yeah. I would similarly. That is not, probably not for. Maybe I've played one of the old Battlefields. What happens in a Battlefield? Are you like a old timey soldier shooting things? Is it that kind of game on a battlefield?
Yeah, my biggest complaint is there's no women's team in Battlefield 6. So I was
I'm
very
waiting for Battlefield 6 WNBA edition. Thank you.
yeah, just a militia of.
I'm like, I've played a game where I snipe at people in World War II. This is the same thing, right? Like,
Oh my goodness. All right. So,
yeah, this kind of genre of game just kind of all collapses into the same patina to me. It's like, okay, modern warfare, whatever, you know.
well, it raises a question: like, how far can this first-person shooter category continue to evolve before it gets absolutely like? When does it become daytime TV? You know, it used to be this innovative thing. It's like exciting. It sort of was a whole change around. Like Doom was something absolutely new. Half-Life changed the
Half-Life.
game.
I mean, you're talking about games that are like 35 years old, you know, 25 years old. Like, I
Yes,
don't.
and
Yeah, I mean, my point is, like, maybe innovation in this genre is like not like you're talking about the earliest kind of emergence of this particular genre, and I don't like, are we going to get back to the Half-Life era? Like, I'm not really sure that's even a reasonable
oh,
goal for this, you know?
yeah, I'm not. So I guess the question is less about like what would be the manifestation or the expression. It's more about like what's the environment. It's like, and you're the historian here, but so wasn't Baldur's Gate 3 a huge improvement on the category of role playing, which is a much older category of play?
Yes, but there also hadn't been a Baldur's Gate in years, right? I mean, there is a version of this kind, and I understand that, like, I'm sure the first person shooter fans listening
Mm-hmm.
to this podcast are going to say, no, Lane, you don't understand the deep nuances
Mm.
between all of these different the 40 different games in this genre that have been released in the past 5 years. But like, there's a, you know, like Baldur's Gate was an entry into which there had kind of been a fairly fallow period for quite a while. Versus like this shit comes out every year, so there's another one of these. Like you're gonna get marginal iteration rather than transformative development, right? And
Yeah.
that seems kind of and it's the community that is interested in playing these games seems fairly, what is it that it doesn't seem like it is in need of, or that anything about its sales viability necessarily hinges on like it, innovating in this genre. It's like not to my taste, but there's clearly a market for this stuff. There's a reason that this genre is what is people primarily think about when they think of video games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find an equivalent, right? So you're absolutely right that there is vastly more iterations and versions of shooter games, out there than there is role-playing games on the same sort of AAA level. So that's true. So it hasn't evolved as rapidly, perhaps, or sort of on a different timeline in the way that I age much more gently than other Dutch people. I don't know. And it's, and if to the extent that I can share, but we did a study over the last year where you look at all these different aspects of shooter games, and some of it is just must-have components. Like you must have, anti-cheating and balancing and like, gun variety and all these kinds of like, anything from like the macros to the actual tactics inside the game. And then there is like an increasingly smaller part of the game where you can be innovative and clever and new. In the same way that, how many different versions of the news can we really find when you check every single TV channel out there? Like they all report on 80%, 90% of the same stuff, mostly in the same way. It's very sort of similar. So it's sort of it's not this platonic perfect form. It's just like the margin for creativity becomes more and more narrow
Well,
over time.
especially when the financial, oh my god, why am I mind blanking? Oh god, I'm so brain dead today. Especially when the like financial resources you need to make these kinds of games is so high level, or is so extensive, it's gonna push down innovation, right? What these companies will tend to rely on is the kind of reliable next iteration of the game with such and such improved graphics or kind of minor tweaks. I mean, this genre to me is like a kind of ongoing sort of Assassin's Creed thing. It's like we're gonna create, a sprawling set of these with like kind of minor changes in between, each particular kind of like brand or subgenre within them, but they're all kind of the same thing, you know?
Yeah, they're all completely the same thing. I mean, to the uninitiated, all these games look alike, right? And so it's a you make a gamble. I mean, you could make the same argument around Call of Duty. Gamescom is going to have some cool announcements around the franchise. It's like, but at some point, it's like, okay, so am I going to really be 52 years old waiting for the announcement of Battlefield 37? Like, like
You were an incel, you might. Like, I'm
makes
just
you.
trying to.
I
I'm just.
I'm a high functioning incel. That's what this is. No, it's like how far can you take this? I mean, here's another universe. Sex in the City needed to die clearly before its sixth season, but it just kept going, and and it would have probably carried on if they let it. But it's like I think things have a
I,
life cycle.
I mean, I don't think you're prepared for the level of opinions I could have about Sex in the City. So I think we
Let's
shouldn't get
let's do
off
a
on
separate
on
episode.
that.
Let's do a separate
Yeah,
episode
separate
because
episode.
I will
I'm
surprise
not
you.
displeased with 6 seasons of the original show.
I'm saying like the
And
I'm just visualizing an adjacent category of entertainment where there's a clear life cycle to a franchise. Like at some point, the young women
like,
in the city narrative stops when you're like well into your 70s and 80s. You're like,
well,
that's not as sexy
isn't
and hip anymore.
isn't the decision ultimately made based on whether, like, how did battle, how are these games doing iteration over iteration?
Mm-hmm.
Are
Mm-hmm.
they performing as expected? Are they scaling as needed? Are they not? I mean, I think we could probably come up with an entire show worth of franchises that have kind of been
Mm-hmm.
mothballed, right? After kind of failure to develop. I mean, let's think about King's Quest 8. No, let's not do that. But
Well, what happened to
right,
that genre though? Like, so maybe it's generational, right?
that genre still exists. It just exists in a smaller space. Or let's say this, it exists in a smaller space comparative to the AAA game industry, right? Which it
Mm-hmm.
kind of always did, right? Adventure games were never like the best-selling games in the world, in the video game space overall. They were kind of a well-performing subunit amongst a variety of other verticals.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that like there's still plenty of companies that make like really interesting, like compelling adventure games, but they're not, and actually, I mean, that's a genre that's had all sorts of innovation that's developed in it, right? I mean, the kind of notion of the walking simulator is a clear extension of the adventure game. I think, like things like Gone Home or Kentucky Route Zero, right? There's been really wild innovation, but it comes from independent developer production. No company is producing a multi-million dollar
Mm.
adventure game, right? Because you just can't, one, you can't sell it in that at that scale, and also you can't long-term monetize it
Interesting.
except on mobile. There's a couple of companies that do mini puzzle adventure game experiences where they can keep selling rapid iterations built on the same engine. There's a few models like that in the mobile space, but you don't see it on console or
Interesting. Yeah, I'd have to take a look. I mean, so I mean, this conversation is also pertinent to like a Sony, where when you go, as going through their earnings, like they released this deck, and sort of like their up and coming thing is like, oh, Marathon from Bungie is coming, right? It just was announced in June. It was delayed, and it puts it in a timeline with like Helldivers and Destiny 2 MLB The Show is like, hey, these are
oh
key
yikes.
releases coming up.
Yeah.
And so, and that's a real, you know, is that going to work out? This was a $3.6 billion acquisition for Sony, and now they got Marathon coming, and like, are people excited? Are people going to care? And so all of these major publishers are putting their hopes on their own version of a first-person shooter game. You're like, all right, so what's the innovation here? Is this going to be cool? Like, how cool can it be? And is it a game that's going to be able to break the network effects of existing shooter games, and or so basically get people and have them play something else? Or is it going to end up like, you know, the Finals or X Defiant or any of them that these would be competitors that were just unable to crack, the existing community and convince them to abandon what they were playing to come somewhere else? Likely they'll play it for like a week or two and then like just go back to where they were. So it's an incredibly difficult proposition, and you have these large publishers pinning their hopes on the success of this. So that's here's truly where creativity and innovation is going to be a differentiator. And let's see who's got the stones.
Is
Who's got
that
the bullets? Who's got the bullets? I'm not quite there.
yeah, this action packed world of who can innovate the first person shooter? Cool.
Yeah, no, see, like, but you see how like unexciting that sounds when you say it?
No, it sounds fucking lame,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, so, I know that people are working very hard on this. At the same time, it's like, okay, so like, how much further can you push this? Or will we ever see the kind of innovation that we've seen in the past, like a Half-Life, where you have some deep storytelling? Is it going to be some indie spin-off? Probably, but it's the hopes are pinned to this moment of innovation that might not actually happen.
I mean, I think you're looking for innovation in the wrong place, right? I mean, where are these kinds of companies incentivized to create quote unquote innovation? And it's in like their monetization and their network effects. Like actually producing like innovation in the game itself feels like quite a secondary proposition to me.
Predictability is probably much
Yeah,
more valuable right now.
is which is why you don't tend to see or why it's so unusual to see a kind of radical shift in the way a large scale AAA company is thinking about a classic genre.
Yep.
You know?
Agree. I mean, it's in many ways it's similar to like music and film and TV production in that, you have a much better chance getting favorable terms negotiating with distributors and operators if you can offer more than one genre, right? If all you're producing is a rom-com or some kind of feel-good movie, that's cool. But give me an action film and this documentary and like basically give me like a sandwich of things so that I can like fill a bunch of slots, then I can give you much better seating.
And that incentivizes easily manufacturable content, and with the
Mhm.
caveat that none of this is easy, and it all takes an enormous amount of like labor and resources, but we're not starting from the ground up on any of this per se. We're trying to make a thing that is incrementally cooler than the last version of what it was.
Mhm. So help us God. Okay, let's go to Capcom real quick.
Capcom, why are we talking about Capcom?
Because it's just interesting. Like, you can't just look at the big dogs all the time. They're as predictable as they are present. So Capcom was up 54% year over year.
Whoa, what did they
Yeah.
do?
Well, let me tell you. They were able to
They
sell the bejesus.
fired 500 people. No, I'm just kidding.
They fired all of their really cool people and kept all the shitty ones. They did well with Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, Street Fighter, and a bunch of ports, including Onimusha 2. They doubled almost their operating profits year over year to 171 million. I like them because they're a little different in that they have this big mix of different things. They also do slot machines, which they define as amusement equipment, and of course they have like all these kinds of sort of gambling machines that are then dressed up like Devil May Cry, that kind of stuff. Which there's a part where somehow when it's a Capcom that seems reasonable to me. When it's any other company, you're kind of like, why are you hanging video games in a gambling box?
They're hanging video games close to something that video games were historically very close to, right?
Hmm.
They treat them within the genre of the coin operated amusement device, right? Whether that's like a slot machine or an arcade or a pinball or whatever, right? There's something kind of old school and charming about that. Good for
No,
you, Capcom.
good for you, Capcom.
I don't think you're ruining the world.
You know, well, they're doing it at a clip of $100.3 billion in 2026. They said.
I
Uh,
assume that is not necessarily a repeatable growth. That is a spike, and then like due to a kind of overwhelming set of releases kind of hitting at the same time, or
that seems to be the case. Yeah, they had higher unit sales and a steady performance of catalog titles. So they do well in that regard. This is also the market moment where existing IP reigns supreme, which is, of course, their bread and butter. I want to briefly also, so on the other side of the spectrum, then, if Capcom is leaning on existing stuff, Krafton came up higher, 12% year over year, and is leaning on new stuff. The big selling point here is that, so they have PUBG, of course, as the franchise. That one is doing well on PC and mobile. PC revenue was up 25% year over year. It's just mind-boggling how they keep pushing that forward. It's sort of like their Fortnite, like it's never ending,
well,
everlasting.
it's what Fortnite was like. It's what Fortnite was based on. You know.
Yes, they both have that same mechanic, and
Yeah,
Fortnite was
Fortnite took the model of the battle royale from PUBG and like iterated it plus building plus
Mhm.
a kind of an engine that better organized for clowning.
Built by a photographer, by the way.
Yeah.
So we saw him at GDC. Do you remember meeting him? No.
For the purposes of this recording, yes.
Yes.
I had a great time.
We had a great time at the Regis, but there was Brendan Green. Anyway, so the mobile wasn't as well for Krafton. They sort of blamed it on the overall mobile market being not very good, but their big hope is vested on Imzoi, which is a Sims fancier version of The Sims. Not a huge Sims player myself, but I met a bunch of the people that work on the franchise. I have a lot of feelings about The Sims.
People who play The Sims are very dedicated to The Sims.
That's
And I
exactly
think,
where I was going.
and yeah, they are not inclined, I think, to jump ship unless, the IP were to really take a nosedive. Like, people are Sims lifers,
Oh, 100%. But so I'm with you on that. So, but this raises the inevitable question because, as you may have noticed, last year was the 25th anniversary for The Sims.
God bless.
My
Sign of the
buddy
cross.
does marketing for Lotto, this Atlanta rapper, and it turns out Lotto is a big Sims player, so they wheeled her out to come play on the 25th anniversary for The Sims, which is and it's this The Sims. The audience is these sort of it's just people that like to play games. It's not
Yeah.
you know Atlanta rappers in short shorts. Different crowd. So to see her on stage was interesting. So the punchline here is that it's a very loyal audience, but they are also, of course, 25 years in, probably starting to age out. Like anybody that's new in the space is going to have to cater to a younger demographic because they're not going to
Yeah.
convince the Sims players to.
Yeah. This is, you got to get people who don't even know, those children hanging out in Roblox who don't even know what The Sims are. Because frankly, you can never outgrow baby Wallen. So.
Oh my God. There we
Do
go.
you know about baby Wallen, right?
That's your dog whistling that crowd. Go ahead, explain it to the cisgendered shooter game money guy.
Baby Wallen's a classic. That's when you put a baby between two walls.
Yeah, classic. I remember when I was.
It's like a slightly more evolved approach than taking the ladder out of a pool, or like locking someone in a room with a microwave. Like, baby will eventually, the baby, I think, will turn into a ghost, but the sounds of babies crying in your walls.
As a recovering parent, that's a polite pass. Clearly, I did not sow all of my wild oats. Anyway, so Inzoi is trying to cater to a younger audience, and they do this. It's interesting to kind of see how they set this up, right? So what all of this amounts to is like all these different publishers sort of gearing up and formulating strategies for the current market momentum in like the next 2 to 5 years. But with Inzoi, they're taking on an interesting approach. So they sold 1 million copies within the first 7 days.
Okay.
Which is, faster than PUBG, which sold 1 million copies in 16 days. And the average Korean package title takes 32 days to get to that level. So it's quite popular. And the success is sort of attributed to the fact that they build this community pre-release, particularly around streamers and influencers, globally, right? So there's a lot there in terms of, like, of course, Krafton should operate on a global level, but they're managing to do that by coming up with this called, I don't know if it's a Gen Z version of The Sims, but since it has a Z in it, Inzoi might as well be the Gen Z Sims. There's a lot of emphasis on, like, taking selfies and the sort of kind of TikTok fitness influencer athleisure style, behaviors, familiar perhaps. And it caters to audiences in Europe, Asia, and North America, all accounting for comparable shares of total sales. So it puts Krafton in an interesting position where they have, on the one hand, of course, PUBG being like this rugged shooter game that became this popular thing for concerts and all these other events. And now they have Inzoi to kind of counterbalance it.
Oh, wow. These character creation models are intense. Also,
Yeah.
perfect for creating, I would assume, for creating videos for faking out your UK Online Safety Act requirements. So I don't know if you've heard about.
I've heard you about it extensively, but why would you go to Inzoi for that?
Just because they're very well rendered, right? So if you can so people have had some success using character creation screens and UXs to create the mandatory videos you have to submit to prove that you are an adult in order to be able to use parts of the internet that are quote unquote labeled not safe for work. So this looks like a program that would be very effective at that.
I have yet to try it. I do notice that it's very lifelike and very detailed. Sort of to the same level as probably your precious Baldur's Gate 3. Where you could just spend hours, grooming your eyebrows and adjusting the size of your various.
Yeah, you can almost make an engram for these people. That's wild. All right.
So and that's before you start the game. So naturally, Krafton's very popular and very optimistic. They are aiming to double their corporate value, so not the revenue, but the market cap to $5 billion. No, actually, they're targeting $5 billion in annual revenue by 2029, split sort of between PUBG and new IP more or less equally. That's a tall order, but I like to see him try. Like Korea, I think, is in general like a really creative space. There's a lot of sort of vanguard design that comes from there, like a lot of that we don't cover here, but it is a particularly different style compared to, say, the
I think
Japanese categories.
if interesting stuff is going to happen in these genres, it's going to happen outside the U.S.
100%, 100%. And so did I cover all the companies that you wanted me to talk about?
Oh my God, I had such a wish list of companies that I wanted to talk about. This is my question to you, Joost. Has anyone been talking about AI or layoffs in these roundups?
Yes.
Or are we just not talking about it?
Layoffs are a bit of a no-no for analysts to bring up. They usually,
it's your industry, man.
No, it's it's the thing that nobody. You don't go on a call with the CEO for company XYZ and go, "Hey, by the way,
ask them about their decisions. Can't do that, sir."
No, I and the way that this is soft power 101. Like because in order to get invited to the analyst calls, you got to kind of be on speaking terms with a few people, and so you don't walk into somebody's house saying, "How much did you pay for this ugly ass couch?" So so if you want to be invited again, it's kind of understandable, and that happened, and they usually preempted. Before you get to ask questions, they do a readout or they have some comments, and they usually reference it, but only as shortly as possible, of course.
We're not going to talk about the way that layoffs contribute to the ultimate financial outlook for a corporation. That would make a CEO feel bad.
It's yes, it taints the narrative that they're trying to paint for you, obviously, or how to say. There is different styles. Like they're not all as uniform as you might think. So I'm always a big fan of Charles Zelnick. He just addresses, he's like, no, that's not a problem. No, we have he answers it in a yes or no, and he looks it dead in the face. So he doesn't avoid the question. He doesn't try to sneak around it. Some companies don't, or CEOs or management teams. So it kind of depends. But in general, it's always about, the nature of analyst calls is, sure, let's talk about what happened the last year, the last decade, but investors care only about the increase in value in the future.
This is where we are spinning you a yarn about why we are still a safe investment.
And what we're going to do that's going to be better. It's yes, it's been unfortunate that we had layoffs, but it's going to improve efficiencies, and we're excited about this new launch, and that's going to totally blah, 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 blah. Right, so that's usually how you get it served, but this is also the job of an analyst. It's you kind of weed through the BS. The other side of that is they do invite you because they do want to influence the narrative to some degree. They want to, what are the spiky questions, who's going to be asking what, and generally it's a good sign as an analyst that you get invited because they care about your opinion, right? Because they feel to some extent that what you say to everybody else is going to impact their business. So, questions about layoffs, it's just one of them. If it was crunch time a decade ago, to stay in the labor set, you can do the same thing around safety. You could set up a whole tree around roadblocks, moderation. This is the nature of tech companies.
Is anyone forecasting stuff around AI?
They are all focused on the short term with regards to efficiencies. It's going to help get blah, 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 blah. Nobody has really declared yet that it's going the kind of gameplay that is going to be possible because of it. So it's sort of this natural thing. This is the same as the first 3 to 5 years in mobile, where you had all the big companies going smartphones, whatever. Sure, let's check it out. And then once they hit 1 billion users, they're all right, we should be there too. But the first couple of years, it's not in their interest to really run fast. With AI, particularly around IP. It's very dicey because it's like a leaky basket, unless that, until, like, it's like search for them, right? Like, until that is sort of locked down and they have some arrangement with the major providers of this technology, they're probably going to be hesitant to kind of go out in a big way. They'll probably have some internal large language models to do dry analytics, but they're not going to have it touch Grand Theft Auto 6 to help out and hurry up and deliver. That's not going to be the case. My guess is at some point we're going to have some completely, spontaneously, instant jib kind of gameplay where you just drop in and it's going to auto generate around you based on a few, metrics or inputs, some prompts. But they're not talking about any of that. Like that, they're focused on what they can touch and can sell right now.
Yeah.
So those are the earnings. That's enough number talk for now. The punchline in all of this is, of course, that they're all trying to formulate and come across as credible with regards to a strategy for the future, what's happening, what's going on. I'd have to note that there's a lot of people in the plus here. There's a lot of increases year over year, as opposed to, declines, etc. It's really
Interesting.
been
You'd
a good
almost think
earnings quarter.
the game industry was doing well.
It is doing well. Year over year, it's up. It was up last
Intriguing.
year too. 2024 was an up year too. So the narrative and the reality are like two different things.
Or the financial landscape and the experience within the industry are two different things,
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing I like about numbers and money is that you can count them, whereas like these promises for the future and like how amazing things would or wouldn't be says you, right? So I think the qualitative side of it is limited in its predictive value, and also just that's just your opinion, man. Whereas like numbers, you can just say, well, this company actually sucks because it's delivering poor games nobody wants to see, nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to spend money on, and that's why it's declining. And so there's a lot of tension between those two different viewpoints. Absolutely.
Yeah. Except that the entire part of an analyst call is a qualitative event. But,
it's numbers. They could be the extent to which it's
the
quantitative.
fireside chat is numbers.
That's the soft layer. That's what I'm saying. Like, they used to just drop it on you and have at it, but now they know that they have to kind of show.
Yeah, they have to
differently.
juice the representation, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's not all. There are like numbers there, but there's also an entire soft power layer that is equally valuable to the way in which they portray confidence, right? Or even what can and can't be talked about lest you not be invited back are also like part of the equation, right?
Correct. And speaking of corrections, I want to, before we move on, I want to point out I previously misnamed the CFO for PlayStation. It's actually Lynn Azar, who's SVP of Finance. Lynn with two N's, and Azar with a Z. And it's it's a bit of it's like finance theater. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a nice term. Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. Okay. Do you want to catch up on some other stuff that happened?
I can just give us a little.
And I want to get to like the basketball thing. So what's the big...
what I told you like everyone else is going to have to wait till the end.
Oh, hurry up!
To hear about the dildos, okay?
All right.
Okay?
Let's hear about. Let's go.
Just updates on prior stories. Patricia Hernandez had a really nice roundup over on Polygon about the ongoing adult game censorship crisis. There's not a lot of movement, so we've talked about how basically itch and Steam de-indexed a lot of their kind of entire prior portfolios of not safe for work games in response to pressure from payment processors. There was definitely a bit of spatting back and forth between Valve and MasterCard. MasterCard saying, we didn't make Valve do anything. Valve saying, oh, yes, you did. Apparently, the two companies never directly spoke, but spoke through intermediaries. So Valve is claiming sort of indirect pressure through that. There was some interesting kind of responses that had happened that we didn't cover. So GOG.com did a little 48-hour giveaway where they were letting anyone download for free 13 adult titles. at a not safe for work games on a specialty website that they created. This is meaning there's been a little bit of a bump of interest in even more niche game distribution services or storefronts. Like apparently there's like Nutaku. So stuff that like mere civilians like us probably don't muck around in. But yeah, the chilling effect is real. So it seems like the situation's at a stalemate. There's definitely been a lot of effort and organization for gamers who are kind of opposed to this stuff to kind of voice their dissatisfaction with the payment processors. Who is on the receiving end of those emails and phone calls? Lord only knows, probably a chatbot. But yeah, so not any interesting movement there. It seems like this is just going to kind of continue. Itch is continuing to kind of go through everything by hand. It also seems like initial reports of the scale of their de-indexing were overestimated. That actually there was like quite a lot of games that were already kind of like non-searchable by preference of the developer or things like that. More interesting is new developments in Google versus Epic, or let's say in this case, Epic versus Google and Apple. So recently there was a new ruling in Australia that is going to make Fortnite be accessible again on iPhones and Android devices. So basically, Epic brought an antitrust case against Apple and Google in Australia, and the ruling sided with Epic's core antitrust argument, finding that Apple and Google used market power to suppress competition, both against rival developers and consumer choice. So this aligns fairly well with the ruling between Epic and Google that we saw in the United States. So there is a kind of, growing momentum around this, right? So Fortnite is returning to mobile platforms in the US, the EU, soon Japan, Australia, all, either is being forced back on with or can be accessed via alternate app stores or payment systems as part of these regulatory shifts, right? So this is an interesting dimension to the case, right? Because when do we ever remember Australia? But they're in the game too,
I spoke to the BBC about this yesterday. It's an interesting one because everybody's taking this as a sign of like the crumbling of platform power.
Yeah.
Maybe not, right? And so the question that constantly comes up with reporters is this a big win or not? It's almost like, so rather than explaining the mechanics of it, it's trying to explain the symbolism of it, right? And so one of the pushbacks is then, oh, well, isn't Fortnite a multi-billion-dollar game? Isn't Epic Games a $5 billion company valued at 20 to 30 billion with investors like Sony and Disney and blah, blah, blah? Yes, that's all true. But relative to like relative to Apple and Google, those are multi-trillion-dollar companies. And so then suddenly $30 billion seems a little bit like, that seems like table stakes, right? So yes, it's a big deal. And yes, it's a sort of unraveling. Already did we see, that recent court ruling, this has just happened today, but so there was a court ruling against Apple, then they had to basically let go of how they monetize. They have to allow alternative payments. They have to stop steering. Basically, the anti-steering policies are no longer allowed, meaning that publishers can now ferry you off platform, sell you something there on their terms in their storefront, and then bring you back to the game. So Supercell does this all the time. Come to the Supercell website and you get more stuff for the same amount of money. And that immediately poses then a sort of a task on publishers, like, okay, now you have to build a direct-to-consumer storefront. So today, and I know this because I'm involved in some of these venture firms, but so AppCharge raised $58 million for a Series B, basically in reaction to the ecosystem shifting, because now publishers have to build their own stuff. And so is it significant? Yes. Is it moving? Yes. Are people getting their hands on it? Absolutely, because it's cutting into their margins. I spoke, just to give you an idea, I spoke with someone yesterday and they were spending like $1 million in user acquisition, and 1% of that process, 1 in 100 cases of users trying to download a title didn't complete, but they had no eyes on it, so they couldn't fix it. So that meant that out of 100 users that would install their game, 1% just didn't make it through, and it just kind of disappeared into the ether. 1% is roughly the margin that they had on a $100 million budget to acquire users every day, every week. And so margins in mobile are super thin. So any kind of improvement there is incredible. So is it significant? Yes, you feel it right away, right? It's a hugely significant change.
And with every critique we are entitled to leverage against, Epic's own market power or whatever, it was going to take a company like Epic to be able to sustain this kind of legal full court press against companies like Google and Apple, right? Like, this will have knock-on benefits for smaller companies, smaller games, just the general proliferation of storefronts. I mean, I'm sure all of the new storefronts will find ways to consolidate their own platform economies, no doubt. But this will open up new kinds of pathways and possibilities. And so, for sure, like a lot of smaller gigs are going to ride on the coattails of this.
I'm very excited. It's a big deal. Good job, Tim.
Sure. Tim and your rock collection.
Give the man his flowers, Jesus. Anyways, all right. So, do you have anything else, or have we have pones and owns?
That's it. Right. I know you're so eager. You're just jumping out of your seat.
I noticed in the analytics that like we talk past an hour, people are tuning out. So we're not doing that. Let's go.
Oh, all right. Well, then you need to give me you need to sound a 3-minute warning way before that. Oh.
Bing.
Okay. So what? You want the pone first?
You have the floor.
Pone for the week. You may have heard. I would be curious to know, Joost, if you had heard what was fluttering about on social media, that there was recently a kind of copycat flurry of individuals throwing green dildos onto the court at WNBA games. This began a couple weeks ago. It began at an Atlanta Dream game several weeks ago. And the first time it happened, I was like, hilarious. Like, I was like, frankly hilarious. Like, I was not yet kind of available for like a cultural critique of this moment. I just thought it was funny. This is like a sport with a disproportionately large number of queer players. And I was like, so hilarious. My culture is not a costume. Thank you.
Oh,
and and it seemed like a one-off thing. And then what happened was it started happening on repeat. And it was like, okay, this is not cute anymore. This is not funny. This is causing a lot of stress, anxiety, weird feelings. Stadium security is getting a lot of harassment for like how these dildos are getting in. And it's like, guys, I don't know how security could possibly stop this because it's literally a dildo. You wear it in. Come on, think it through. Unless you want a full body pat down. But, there was a story where like at a Liberty game, like someone tried to throw a dildo on the court and it wound up hitting a 12-year-old girl. Someone was arrested for this, right? And eventually it was figured out that the people responsible for this, or at least for some of them, were the folks behind a penis-themed meme coin. Like a crypto, that they considered this organic marketing for their movement. And it's just like the worst twist that you could ever have on a situation like this. It's like, this is the darkest timeline possibility of who could be responsible for this scenario.
That is some level of singularity. So it's crypto bros throwing dildos to go hopefully viral for their penis-based
meme coin.
Yes.
Yes.
I must be getting old because what? Like, I don't know. It's
Yeah. The modern world sucks. Even weirder was that I think sometime last week, Donald Trump Jr.
oh boy.
posted an image of kind of making fun of this. He posted this on his Instagram. I thought it was AI generated I thought it was fake when I first saw it, and I went to his account and I was like, I can't believe this is real. But it's like an AI created image or like Photoshop copy pasta of Donald Trump on the roof of the White House. Remember when he walked on the roof of the White House last week? That was cool. Him throwing a green dildo at a group of all black basketball players on a court that is in the Rose Garden for no clear reason. I was like, the level of semiotic literacy future historians will need to unpack this image is
Yeah,
like too much. Like
that's where AI would actually be very helpful. Like just like
can you
run
explain
it.
what's going on here? Why is this happening? I was so angry I had to block him on Instagram. I was so that's a big pwn. Don't do that. No one wants your meme coin. Please go away.
Yeah, I mean it's wild. I mean, yeah, sports has always been this arena. I mean, I guess sort of we call it a public sphere, right? Where we work out tensions, anxieties, frustrations. We have this like there's this whole symbolic narrative that goes on. As they say in the Netherlands, like soccer is war. Like it's always countries and cities battling each other. This is big to do. And so you play out these weird societal cultural tensions in the you know area of a sports field. I guess WNBA is really hitting a nerve. It's probably why you're there too. Like it's more than just. It has nothing to do with a bunch of people throwing balls through hoops, does it? I think we've left that part of the mechanics way, way long ago. It's a much more manifest movement of some kind, and they're clearly trying to like jack that, like how do you say, for their marketing purposes, right? It's like they're trying to do the thing. Like
Yeah,
they know it's a flashpoint. They
I
know
mean,
that's why it shows up on Twitter or whatever.
what is disturbing about it is like if this is actually supposed to be an effective form of viral marketing, then do it at a men's game. They have a much higher fucking viewership rate. Like why like the level of comfort
No, I
and
disagree completely.
safety that a guy would have
Mm.
thinking that you can get away with this at a WNBA game because you would get your ass beat by security at an NBA game, right? Like there's a reason they're targeting women's games for this kind of behavior, and it includes like a form of mockery and sexual harassment of the players.
Oh,
For sure.
it's not even
You
an
know,
undertone. I totally, but I don't think that security for WNBA is different from an NBA game.
I think it would have been taken much more seriously, much more immediately.
Yes. No, look,
You know,
yes, like
yeah.
maybe the double take would be different or absent, right? But it's always like tell me again how games and sports are not at the center of everything all of the goddamn time. Well done, that's a good one. I guess
It's a bad one, but yes.
no, it's a good bad one. It's like there's a lot there, a lot to unpack. I'll keep my own short because it's something that you have to go watch. So Gabe Newell out of nowhere has done an interview with some YouTuber, and it is just fascinating how like he has some real zingers in there about like if you aren't already, you should go get better at AI. He seems to be a big fan of it. He has
Go
some really
get
interesting.
better at AI.
Yeah,
Okay,
like learn it
cool.
as a skill. Like he sees it more as a literacy than anything else. I think it's sort of a catalyst, whatever, to do more, better work. He's an engineer, of course, ultimately, right? And then he has a very cynical perspective on venture capital, saying like, "No, that's a total waste of time. That's not how you make games with venture money." So he has some real good sound bites in there, but it's like apparently filmed. Like it's this YouTuber who is very knowledgeable and nice. He's doing a great job. Never heard of him before, which of course because I don't know him,
Yeah,
it
that's a
doesn't matter.
sign that he might be famous. Like
Yeah, because Yost knows him. And so, but like, here's this. It's like so the connection is like, how does someone as like ephemeral as like a Gabe Newell, this like mercurial character, then end up talking to this unknown YouTuber, and it's recorded in like a hotel room. It's a remote call, and you just so the punchline of the own is like, okay, so you sit through this. This is one of our industry's billionaires.
Yeah.
This man owns multiple yachts. This is our Elon Musk. This is the true video game industry. This is our Jeff Bezos. And he's just so nice. I like him. Like, like he's weird and wrong a lot of the times, but at least he's not trying to build a giant dick-sized rocket and shoot himself into space. And he's just so much more sympathetic. And he takes calls with unknown YouTubers. He's not trying to be on 60 Minutes, and he's not in it he's never in it for the prestige. So maybe that's the way to put it. And so I like that so much. It's like he's sort of true to the nature. It's like he represents sort of what's good about games in a way. It's like people just having a good time. And
he's sort of like a Steve Wozniak type, for a different generation or century, maybe, just like not in the sense of like the technological genius archetype, but like this is just a strange man who has clear fixations and will do surprising things that are out of character for someone of his wealth and position. That seems to be what I'm taking away from this.
Yes.
I mean, apparently, if he's showing up on podcasts, Gabe Newell, open invitation.
Gabe, call us. All right. I'm going to go pick up another child from camp.
Ah, okay.
Walk us out of here.
Well, with that, good night and good game. I got nothing else.